The simplest way to define it is consciousness is the domain of information that you can pay attention to volitionally. So you have three ideas that are very closely interconnected: consciousness, attention, and volition. So let me give you an example. It has nothing to do with action. You might have locked-in syndrome and be lying in your bed, but you could play Beethoven's Ninth Symphony and then pay attention to some instrument. And then you could rewind the tape and pay attention now to somebody's voice.
So you're shifting your focus in a sense.
You're shifting your focus, and by paying attention to this versus that, you're changing the content of your consciousness. So you can think of consciousness as the space within which this mental operator of volitional attention can do things like attend to this versus attend to that. Now, the contents of this space is the result of a lot of pre-conscious and unconscious processing. So when inputs hit your retina, light impinges upon your retina, let's call it time zero. About 250 or maybe 350 milliseconds later, you see something. Now, all the pre-conscious operations that happen in that quarter or a third of a second are not conscious, but they create your consciousness. And you go from a pattern of pixels that are two-dimensional on the retina to a full-blown three-dimensional experience of the world. And this process involves lots and lots of processing operations, and it's inferential. So for example, if I go outside of this building and I see that the ground is, say, wet, I can't help but see it as wet because all my automatic pre-conscious processing in that quarter to one-third of a second came to the conclusion that the ground is wet. So you might call that a perceptual inference. It's automatic and it goes into the construction of your experience, your subjective experience, which equals your consciousness. But then based upon that, I can make later inferences or cognitive inferences and say, well, the ground is wet. Well, it must have rained. Oh, but wait, the sky is blue. Can't have rained. Maybe a gardener came by and hosed the ground on. Oh, but wait, today's Sunday. And so this can go on forever. So we've got different kinds of inferential processes. One goes into the construction of your consciousness as you experience it, and then these cognitive operations take that and draw other conclusions.
Okay. So I would imagine that a lot of animals would have a lot of the former, the idea that, oh, it's wet or it's snow or something, but not so much of the latter.
Well, I would agree that consciousness is probably very ancient and very widespread. And the reason you would want to have consciousness very early in evolution is because an animal should automatize everything that it can so that it's presented with the world as it is. And this idea goes way back to von Uxall in 1913 or something. He talked about the Umwelt of an animal, but it's really the world as it's experienced by an animal. So even a very, very distant animal from us phylogenetically, like an octopus, I think is very likely conscious, even though it's a mollusk, because the octopus has to have a representation of the world in which it operates. And so we can look at an octopus and we can infer that it has to be processing information at a level higher than just features that would be detected at its retina. So for example, there's a famous video by, I think his name is Roger Hanlon, showing an octopus camouflaged against a piece of coral. And it's camouflaging itself not only in terms of texture and color, but in terms of the shape of its skin. It's actually changing the shape of its skin in 3 dimensions to match the shape of the coral. That must mean, I think, you can infer that the octopus's brain is processing 3-dimensional shape. But that's not at its retina. So it also has to be representing things at a very high level. And if you want to use a computer analogy, you want to pre-compile everything you can so that you can process things rapidly.